We're live. Khela hobe or Khela khatam. Bengal 2021 is a super exciting battle for one main reason, that it puts the left against the right. And no other state other than Bengal could have done that. Now we are here to discuss Deep Halder's book, Bengal 2021. Welcome to the discussion, Deep.
Thank you, Pallavi.
And we also
Thank you,
have with
KLF,
us senior journalist. We also have with us senior journalist and author Rituparna Chatterjee. Both of them are wonderful authors, and both of them happen to be Bengalis, and that's what we're going to be discussing here, what the mood of Bengal currently is. So, Deep, any opening remarks from you about your book? It's a great book. It's a great way you've looked at the Bengal elections from different social and economic and political realms. You've contextualized this election really well in this book. It's an easy to read small book. So, any opening thoughts that you have that you'd like to share with the viewers?
I think it's one of the most interesting elections, Pallavi, in recent times. I mean, as we're talking, I was going through my Twitter feed, and something or the other is happening every half an hour. The BJP's list came out, and there's Trinamool's Mahua Moitra reacting to it, saying that why can't BJP bring out all the names, bring out all the lists in one go, at one go. And there's a snide at the BJP for not having enough candidates, winnable candidates, so they have to do it in phases, bring out the list of candidates. So it's very interesting. Khala Hobe itself is a very interesting coinage. The BJP's counter to it is also interesting. So every day, every minute, almost something or the other is happening. So it's a great time as a journalist, as a writer, to be sort of observing what's happening. I mean, I really want to go to Bengal now, and not be stuck in Delhi, so that I can travel with be with the people, travel with the leaders, go to constituencies, get out of Kolkata, see what's happening. So yeah.
Rituparna, what is your reading of the election and the current scene in Bengal? You don't live in India currently, so consuming the news and consuming whatever updates are coming out of Bengal, what is your take?
Well, it's certainly very dramatic and entertaining, but it's more about Bengal's own evolution, because very tiny example of being on the streets. Last I was there during CA protests. I couldn't find jhal muri, a staple snack. I could find papri chaat, and I'm like, am I in Delhi or what? It was really quite bizarre. It didn't feel like Bengal, and I think that's what this election is about. It's more about the evolution, and Deep has gone to the streets in his book. He has mentioned that famous story which went viral, in which somebody ordered the Communist Manifesto and they got the Bhagavad Gita. So it's that, earlier it was always about Ghoti Bangal. Have you migrated from Bangladesh or not? It's one of the first opening conversations all Bengalis will have. Now it's different. Are you a liberal? Are you a Modi Bhakt? The same thing. So it's about the evolution of Bengal, I think that's what's more interesting than just getting caught up in all the tiny things that all in the news. Well, not so tiny, but yeah, all the politics. So.
Yes. So you mentioned a very interesting point in the first bit of your book, which can actually grip anybody who's never lived in Bengal, has always understood Bengal as an outsider, somebody like me, is that Bengal is it's largely perceived as a left-wing state. It's the state of the Bhadralok Bengali. It's the state where where Naxalbari is, and it's the state where and you put this the lie of the revolution is lived, and there's a sort of a very communist laziness around things and slowness around things which has existed in Bengal, and of course it's been successful also in the case of Operation Barga and the land reforms in the way and a lot of it's had its own history, of course. But over the years, I mean, the recent past, where the BJP has actually sort of invoked Bengal's social reformers more than the TMC. You know, whether it's
Yeah,
Ishwar
yeah,
Chandra Vidyasagar or the PM, for instance, into
yeah.
2019 when the Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar statue was
That
vandalized.
was
Such
vandalized.
instances were
Yes.
literally at the core of this political tug of war between the BJP and the TMC. And this
Hmm.
sort of Mamata Banerjee's solitary sort of ownership of these icons sort of
Yeah, yeah,
took a beating. Where and of course, you know, Prime Ministers also talked about. Of course, Sham Prasad Mukherjee is the founder of the Jan Sangh, and a lot of these. In fact, even in 2015, talking about the declassification of Netaji's files. So
yeah.
BJP has been successful in you know, kind of appropriating these leaders and sort of, you know, breaking into this solitary control of these social reformers and cultural reformers. How do you think this has played out on ground? Do you think people have, you know, taken a notice of this, which has been going on, and it's been strategically going on for a while? Like even
Yeah.
Vivekananda, for instance, the you know, the whole story of like you know, Vivekananda influencing Modi's life and Modi coming to Bengal and meditating in the mud.
Right.
So how do you think this has had an impact?
Uh, a problem of looking at Bengal through the lens of Kolkata is, Bengal, of course, sort of is largely a one city state. So
Yeah.
when we talk of Bengal, we think it's Kolkata, but there's a Bengal beyond Kolkata. So this assumption that religiosity is sort of something that's new to Bengal, or not
Yeah.
just religiosity, uh, a sense of the political right is new to Bengal is not correct. Perhaps there was nobody to give shape to it, and because of 34 years of left rule, the dominant discourse
Yeah.
in Kolkata, and still is, so dominant discourse in Kolkata used to be sort of very left centric. But outside Kolkata, there is a sense, there has always been a sense of the right, and to say that yes, in Kolkata is a very different city. So you'd get those examples from time to time of Azan being played from a Durga Puja pandal and the controversy around it. But even things like during Durga Puja, it's absolutely okay. When our North Indian sort of friends would sort of not would shun sort of non-vegetarian food, we would gorge on non-vegetarian food. We would gorge on mutton biryani. So there are mutton biryani stalls outside Durga Puja pandals.
Yeah.
So all of that is fine, but that necessarily is not the experience of Bengal outside Kolkata, right?
Yeah.
So to say that it's because of Mr. Modi or because of the BJP sort of expanding its footprint across India, that this is suddenly happening and this is a very post 2019 phenomena, it's not correct. There has always been a sense of Bengal's uh, past association with the right. I mean, don't forget, not just we mentioned Shah Prasad Mukherjee. I mean, who's of course a very stellar figure in the right scheme of things. But there was Aurobindo before that, Rishi Aurobindo. There was Bankim Chandra before that. So the sense of the right, sense of the
Yeah.
Hindu right, has been very inherent to Bengal. I mean, like you said, even Naxalbari, of course, the entire Naxal movement
Yeah.
originated from Bengal and then spread to Bihar and then to other places. But much before that, there was a sense of the right.
Yeah.
Okay, now because of 34 years, and this is recent history. So before Mamata Banerjee
Yeah.
came to power in 2011, there were 34 years of left, and left dominated the discourse. So obviously, those senses, as far as Kolkata is concerned, got pushed back, but that sense was always there. There's this whole thing about the Jai Shri Ram slogans, and you will hear things like
Yeah.
nobody worships Ram, but there's a almost 300-year-old Ram temple just outside
Yeah.
Kolkata. So yeah, in Kolkata you may not have had people saying Jai Shri Ram, because Kolkata, like I said, Kolkata is a very different experience. I mean, can you really say that Mumbai is Maharashtra? You cannot, right? I mean, there are, if you go to Mumbai, it's a very different reality. Likewise, the discourse is dominated by Kolkatans, but Bengal is not Kolkata's, and it is you are seeing all of this now politically, but I think a sense of a very different identity, sense of Hindu religiosity has been there outside Kolkata, in Kolkata also, but maybe not so much in mainstream discourse, which is now coming out. So it's not a new thing. It's not a 2019 to 2021 phenomenon. It has always been there. I mean, you had to go out and see it. So I mean, that I think people didn't.
Yeah. It's possibly also because the left controls most of the academia and most of the
Left controls most of the academia, and it's interesting. For instance, if I may just come in and say that even certain very prominent right-wing voices, something I discuss in the chapter Chodolog versus Bhadralog, say that one of the I think it's Mr. Tathagata Roy, who wrote that one of the good things, most probably him, he wrote on Twitter that one of the great things of the left is that during left rules, they really pushed caste back. Now it's not fully true, because if they had pushed caste back, I mean, yes, I mean, you don't discuss caste so openly. But if you had pushed caste back, even in Kolkata, and where I was growing up, and I was a I was a South Kolkata boy, but I would read Bengali newspapers, and now that I think back, there would be these matrimonial columns where caste was prominently on display. So you may not talk about those things in university campuses, or sort of, you may not ask caste as casually as some places in the north. But there was always a sense of caste. So, but what the left perhaps did, and for good or bad, you didn't speak about these things so openly. I mean, Morichapi itself, one interpretation of Morichapi, the massacre that happened where thousands of Dalit Hindu refugees were killed, one interpretation of Morichapi, and I didn't say it. I mentioned it in the book as part of what other people were saying, because I was not convinced. But when the book came out, somebody no less than Vivek Debroy and from both the right side of the divide and the left, they came out and said, look, this happened because these people were largely Namashudras, they were Dalits. So the left thought that they could get away by doing this to people. I mean, they were not people like us. So this was 1978-79. This was left had come to power in 1977. So to say that there's no caste because of left, and left dominated the discourse, so caste was pushed back, it's only on the surface. So the point I'm trying to make, Pallavi, is there was a Kolkata is like it's like a very pretty mask, but the reality of Bengal may be very different. And now the mask is off, and now, so it's not just 2019. I mean, it was always there. It was simmering, these issues. And now so now you are seeing a bit of the not real, I mean, Kolkata is also real, but you are seeing a sense of Bengal, which perhaps you didn't see as an outsider before. Because it was very picture perfect, very postcardish, you sort of see a Victoria Memorial and a Howrah Bridge, and you go to Park Street in the evening, and but that's not Bengal. That's a part of Kolkata which is also a reality, but that's only a tiny part. There are other large parts of Bengal which was largely unexplored. I think one thing the 2021 assembly elections is doing is exploring those parts. Those parts are being mainstream. So which for what they're worth is a very interesting thing.
Yes. Rituparna, the BJP's reach is now beyond the Vindhyas. And as a Bengali, do you feel the Hindi Bhashis have descended on your motherland and your state? And do you feel that the modern Bengali identity will sort of resist the right wing and resist the Saffron Party in any way?
There my timeline is flooded with people protesting. I'm forgetting the hashtag. For my sanity, I'm not following it. But basically not voting for BJP. So it is there both ways. But like Deep pointed out, the whole image that we have of Bengal in Calcutta, it's a very elitist perspective. It's who controls the message also. So that is definitely true. It's not new. And I can definitely give another parallel with Trump's America. Everything that came up was always there. It just, it came into limelight. So, I don't know what else to add to that. You said it all.
So you do think that it's not a homogeneous identity.
It never was. It never was. It's just what is portrayed, and that's because who controls that narrative? It's all the
who do you think controls the narrative? The left.
Again,
it's actually been a left, and then TMC, ruled the state.
Sorry?
It's essentially been a left and then a TMC rule state.
No, but I'm talking generally about the image of Calcutta, the image that this is Marxist. That's a very Bhadralok centered, very much in Calcutta. The intellectual elite, the media, they do not reflect the ethos of the larger state. And I don't think that's just for Bengal. That's true for anywhere in the world. It's what narrative is presented to us. We tend to assume, we tend to form our opinions, we tend to view that place like that, like he just mentioned, Park Street, all of that. But that's not even all of Calcutta, leave alone Bengal. So we're just beginning to see that nothing is homogeneous, and I think that's actually a healthy start. From there, I don't know.
That's one of the great things like Deep said this election is doing, is it opening up Bengal
Yes.
to the
Yes.
world, that Bengal is beyond Calcutta's borders. Bengal is beyond people who read and write telegraph. It's a lot of other people with a lot of other diverse opinions who also live in Bengal, who may have other concerns that are not really addressed. And it's not always about the left versus the right, or people opposing Modi. People also need jobs. People also have are running businesses or manufacturing or industry, and they have such concerns which sort of never come out of Bengal. Because it's always it's always regarded as a state that reads and writes, and that's what it does. So now, coming to Mamata Banerjee, now this is a leader who's, this is no ordinary woman. At the age of, 29, you're, defeating a, stalwart like Somnath Chatterjee from a seat like Jadavpur, and a 34-year-old left rule you oust at that age, and then you come to power. I mean, she's not from a valuable like bloodline, and she's a street fighter. She's risen from a low middle class background just on the basis of her street fighting and her strategy. So now how do you analyze her character in this? Because she's somebody who'll sort of fight elections on her personal appeal, and she can also feel like these cardboard cutout characters from the film world, and not exactly it's always she doesn't hold back ever. So how do you see her character shaping up? Do you think that this election is going to dent her image, or if she wins, she's probably gonna be there forever? That, like people say for Modi ji also, Ajivan Pradhan Mantri, so Ajivan CM.
I think nothing is Ajivan, but Mamata Banerjee is an extremely popular leader. Her political rise has been phenomenal. What she went through during left regime, those black and white pictures are still there on the internet of her being roughed up on the streets, and she almost lost her life. And she mounted a very spirited fight.
You mentioned Lalu Alam. Interestingly, you mentioned Lalu Alam in the book. And how he switched.
How he switched, yes. So a very interesting, political career, and she still remains a very popular leader. But in the last assembly elections, there was also discontent against the TMC government. Okay, but what she managed to successfully do, and maybe BJP was not as organized in Bengal as they are now, what she successfully managed to do was, it's in some ways, and I get hit from both sides for saying this. What happens with BJP and Mr. Modi? So even if there are certain aspects of the BJP that people, or the government at the center, that people don't like, Mr. Modi is immune from it. So in the last assembly election, Mamata Banerjee was able to do that. That even if her party sort of was not very popular when elections were about to take place, she somehow came out as somebody who you had to vote for, who you had to stand by. So she could create this distinction between her and the party, and her and the government. That okay, my government may have erred, but I am who I am. This time the BJP, and because of the book, I spoke to Mr. Dilip Ghosh, BJP Bengal president, a couple of times, and I asked him this question specifically, that would she successfully be able to do that this time too? So he said, but of course he would say this, but he said that, and there's a sense also I got from some certain other quarters, that this time that won't work. This time there's so much discontent on the ground that people won't fall for that she is somehow not to be blamed for what her government did wrong, or what some of her party men may have done wrong, because there's a lot of discontent also. It's after 2 terms. We'll have to wait and see whether she's still pulls through. But on the other point that you are making, I don't think so that will she become much bigger than what she is now. Will she come to the center stage nationally? See, in the last elections, assembly elections, BJP got how many? 3 seats. Now, even I think there are many ways people are sort of predicting polls. I don't do that because I have gone wrong many times. I mean, you have been a political journalist, Pallavi. You know
This is also a
how
very tough
wrong
election to call.
journalists are, sort of how wrong they're proved every time election results come out. But even if the BJP were to win, say, 100 seats or near about 100 seats, 100 to 105, and not win it, imagine going from 3 to 100. Imagine 100 constituencies with BJP. Imagine 100 MLAs in the assembly. So she's going to have a very, very tough time. It's not. I don't think, and I can perhaps say this with some degree of certainty, that it's not going to be a sweep in favor of the TMC. So if it's not, she is going to have her hands full managing her state, because it will be a very powerful opposition. So I think that would be something to sort of for her to watch out for.
Okay. There's on the cover of your book you've put cycles. Now on the in the Republic Day parade this year we had the Bengal float which also had cycles. Now, is there any other scheme other than cycles that has actually hit the roads running? Like, is there anything happening in Bengal other than these 2-3 schemes of Mamata Banerjee? Like, from a governance lens, if we look at the way TMC has performed, if leaving the manufacturing and industry aside, like, this is a question for the two of you, since you both must be having family in Bengal, and you obviously visit Bengal much more often than a lot of other people do for writing, reporting purposes. So do you see schemes working on ground, whether it's electricity or power or water or healthcare, education, in these spheres? How do you think the government has done?
Some of the recent schemes have been populist. Those whether it's the canteen or the medical benefits that you will get. Some of the recent schemes have been populist, and they're sort of they have found some degree of acceptability. But I think in the larger scheme of things, see, when I was especially sort of touring Bengal for the book, one thing that I thought was kind of an inflection point was Amphan. Amphan Relief Fund, the corruption over the Amphan Relief Fund. I think that really, and I mentioned this in the book also, at that time, that really angered the people, that even relief coming in for people who have suffered due to Amphan, and those are very poor people, that money has been siphoned off. So, this cut money menace, widespread corruption. One of the Mamata Banerjee's model of governance is taken from the left. She, I think, while opposing it, she also studied it very, very closely. But one thing the left had for many years of sort of their rule was a very tight grip on the party. So if there's political violence that they would unleash, they could control the violence. If there's corruption that they would indulge in, they would know to a large extent where to stop. One of the things that has gone wrong with this government is that I think there's no central control over the shit that's happening on the ground. So I have businessmen friends in Calcutta. So they said, during the left rule, you have to pay hafta or cut money. But you knew that there's this one person, one CPM leader you would have to pay to. I mentioned this in the book, in the chapter Law and Disorder. So he said, okay, every month you would pay to this one person. And this one CPM leader, there's a fun story. He says that there's a local CPM leader who had a marriage in the family. So he said, you tell me how much money I need to give you. And he said, I was willing to pay much more. But the gentleman said, no, you only pay this much. And I have one more condition, that you won't attend the marriage function, because I'm a communist. I can't have a businessman coming to my marriage function. It will send out a wrong signal. Now, this particular gentleman, he owns a cinema hall in Kolkata. I haven't mentioned the name deliberately because he has to stay there and run his business. He said that, during PMC's, Vietnam is cinema hall shut down and whatnot. So he said, during this government, so from the same region, there were three local toughies, all belonging to the TMC. So he got very flustered, and everybody asked for money. So there is just randomly come and ask for money. So he sort of sought an appointment with the chief minister, Mamata Banerjee, and she said that, Didi, give me this at least one name, to whom I'll pay. I can't keep paying money to everybody who comes in. So apparently a number was written down on a sheet of paper and said, okay, you call this person and your problem will be fixed. And his problem was fixed. But how many people have the opportunity to sort of, to fix such problems? So that's one of the things that have gone horribly wrong. It's not as if it was great before. There was no corruption. But I think there is to a large extent, there is no control over how the party is run.
That's what I was coming to next.
Yes. So I think that's
something over the cadres. Like, has she lost
over the cadres?
Because the kind of people
when she comes out on the streets, I mean, you'll still see that there's a large crowd when Mamata Banerjee hits the streets, and like I said, she remains a popular leader. But day-to-day governance, I think this is one of the big things that have gone wrong. Apart from no industry and large-scale joblessness, and sort of people moving to other states to find jobs. All of that is there, but these 2-3 things. I think this cut money menace, cut money at every. No matter what you do, you have to pay cut money, and this losing control over the cadre. So I think this is this remains a big problem.
Rituparna, your thoughts?
The expert has spoken. I would just, I was just, in his book, there's this writer, Manoranjan Bapari, and he said that he's one of the people who's, the really thoughts of Bengal is there. And he says that the Choto Lok and the Muslim votes are with Trinamool, and, it's only the Bhadra Lok who will go for BJP. So that again is very interesting to, he can elaborate on that.
I mean, Manoranjan Bapari is a friend. I mean, I have sort of, he's a very interesting writer. You should, Pallavi, sometime speak to him, interview him. He is a Naxal, he's a beggar turned Naxal, turned rickshaw puller, turned writer, and now he's a Trinamool MLA candidate. Okay, so he may win. He's a Dalit. He's very, very, very interesting guy. Fascinating guy. His books are now translated into English. And he was discovered, how he was discovered also is a brilliant story. He was discovered by Mahashita Devi, who was on his rickshaw. Okay, and sort of he happened to, when she got down, he turned around and said, "You are Mahashita Devi." So she was astonished. She said, "How is it that you know me?" He said, "I read your books." So he lifted the seat and brought out her books, which you'd read, when he's not sort of ferrying his rickshaw. And then he told her that he also writes, and he showed her writings, and she invited him over to her house, and that's how his literary journey began. So it's interesting, and he in the book he tells me for this book he also is a survivor of Morichapi massacre. So he also tells me that that Bhadralok, I don't know what to make of his comment though, because if you define the Bhadralok as the genteel class from Kolkata to which Rituparna belongs, the Bhadralok seems to be very anti-BJP, but very, 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 very concerned about how sort of it will. Kolkata will cease to be secular, Bengal will cease to be secular if BJP were to come to power. But what perhaps Manoranjan Bapari was referring to is that, is BJP being an allegedly Manuvadi party that sort of enforces the caste system, but interestingly, it's if the BJP were to come to power, or if the BJP were to do very well in the Bengal elections, it is because of the Chotolok vote. It's because of the lower caste vote. BJP has really, for a party that is alleged to be a Manuvadi party, it's interesting how in Bengal, they have actually turned it downside up. They have completely ignored the Bhadralok and they have gone straight for the Chotolok. So I think even though Manoranjan Bapari is a Dalit and he has sort of now sided with Mamata Banerjee, I think a large chunk of the Dalit vote will go to the BJP. The Matuas, for instance, Shantanu Thakur from Thakur Nagar, the Matuas, for instance, that's one sort of chunk of votes that the BJP is banking on. So it's very interesting how BJP has played caste in this election without mentioning it always. So it's in fact perhaps contrary to what Manoranjan Bapari has told me in the book. It's not the Bhadralok, so to say. It's the Chotalok that the BJP has taken with them.
Yes, this has actually been their strategy in UP as well. In 2019 election, in fact, people were banking on the alliance between Mayawati and Akhilesh, and this is they had completely torn through this entire caste sort of web of the Jatavs and the Yadavs and the other OBCs as well. So it was fascinating how they tear through this sort of caste landscape and they end up winning elections and of course the RSS played a very big role there. And not just as an ideology, they provided identity, they provided purpose, they were sheltering people during floods in different parts of the country. So it's always this ground outreach that has worked in favor of the BJP.
Yes, I think one other thing they consciously do, at least Modi Shah's BJP, is they don't read, or even if they do, they completely ignore what people like you and I have to say in opinion columns.
Yeah.
So I think that that helps them politically. So yes, I mean, if you look at some of the things that are said on Twitter,
the focus is more where the votes are coming from. Where the masses are, how the masses think, and how because the masses are not speaking directly to the politician, but to the psyche of the politician, and they understand that perfectly well.
Yeah. So no, you're saying, sorry.
Okay, no, I was just going to throw my next question at you. So this is about how the opposition's claim that the BJP is against free speech. Now, this is something that Bengal has caused, and TMC especially has caused a tremendous dent to, because when in 2019, when the PM was campaigning in West Midnapur and Thakur Nagar, there was a stampede and there was a lot of violence that sort of became mainstream. It was in the mainstream media. Then and then a girl called Priyanka Sharma had shared a meme of, I think it had Mamata Banerjee and morphed on Priyanka Chopra's picture or something like that, and she was jailed. She was arrested for that. So now this is something that the opposition always accuses the BJP of doing, and of course with sometimes there are actual cases where this has happened, that freedom of speech is under threat. But now when the TMC does it, why doesn't it become as big an issue?
It's interesting you asked me this because a few hours ago, somebody I spoke to a lot for the book, Dr. Indranil Khan, he's a doctor. He has got a ticket to sort of fight the election from the BJP. He's a doctor, and he was during Corona time when the Corona hit us. He was out on the streets trying to help people. So he was moving from one nursing home to the other, tending to patients. Okay, so he was extremely disappointed with the state of affairs in Bengal's hospitals, Kolkata's hospitals. So he did a tweet. He said that you can't give raincoats, and it was a funny thing. He said that raincoats embossed with Donald Duck. And he did a tweet, said that this won't protect healthcare workers. You need to give us proper PPE kits. So what happened was when he came out of a nursing home, he met two cops and he was asked to accompany them, and he was detained, not arrested. He was detained through the night and till the next noon. Okay, his phone was taken away, and he kept asking that what wrong did I do? And he said that they said no, there's order from above. There's order from above. So what sometimes sort of what the discourse, for instance, the Telegraph. Let me just take names here. For instance, Telegraph does front pages accusing the Modi government of curbing free speech. But right there in Bengal, there's instances after instances of this being happening. I can tell you, I won't be able to take names, that for the past several months, the very prominent, very big newspaper, and the editor has been receiving calls from Mamata Banerjee's office. So 10:30 is the time you release the pages, and around 10 o'clock or 10:15, there would be calls from the CMO, Chief Minister's office, asking him for headlines for the next day's papers. Okay, so this is something he can't come out and speak about.
This is something
But
you're saying. This is something that's going on in Bengal.
Going on in Bengal, saying that just not don't just tell me what the story is, tell me the headline of the story. Okay, so I mean, if this is not curbing free speech, I don't know what is. I have been a journalist for some 20 years now. I have done. I have been an editor, and I'm not saying that one government is necessarily better than the next. But I was in, forget Delhi. I was in Bhopal running a newspaper, and the paper I ran was extremely critical of Shivraj Singh Chauhan government throughout my tenure of two and a half years. Okay, and there used to be problems. I mean, there are people who would call and sort of and say that this is a rubbish story. You must sort of put out a rejoinder. But I never got a call asking me for a headline. What is your headline? We want to know before you release the paper. That had never. It might be somebody else's experience. It has never happened to me. And this was Bhopal, but this is the experience in Kolkata. I mean, not that. I mean, bloggers have been sort of arrested. All sorts of things have happened. So I don't know why it's not being talked about. I think one of the reasons it's not being talked about, as you have created this binary. So the BJP and Mr. Modi is some sort of fascist force that is now sort of evil fascist force that is now coming to Bengal. And Mamata Banerjee, this 5'2" lady with white sari slippers, is going to stand against them. So I think people who are saying these things ignore, or consciously or otherwise ignore what's happening in their own backyard. Okay, and sort of try help build that narrative. Now, whether that works or not in the elections, you have to see. But there have been so many instances of free speech, freedom of expression being curbed. I mean, it's quite tough. If you are in the public space, and if you are sort of if you take a stance which is anti the Trinamool Congress government. A friend of mine, I mentioned him in the book, Indranil Roy, he used to be a entertainment journalist. He did a tweet saying that the immensely popular actor and Trinamool Congress MP Dev Adhikari. So he had done a tweet saying some time ago, I think last year, saying that one of Dev's films that were to release has been a lift from a Pakistani movie. Okay. Now that's an opinion. You may like it, you may not like it. It may be damaging to Dev Adhikari especially, but you do write such things, So he was not at home, but there were cops came and rang the bell and spoke to his parents. And then he was asked they told his parents that your son should come to the police station and talk to us, which he had to do. Now, this happened in Kolkata. This is not outside some remote place of Bengal. This happened right in Kolkata. So these things have also happened, and these things are happening as we speak. So yeah, but I guess it's because of the binary some people have created that BJP is this fascist force that is going to come and conquer Bengal now, and that would be very bad for Bengal. That they deliberately, perhaps, because there's no other way to say this, because if you're there and if you see it around you, why won't you talk about it? So they ignore what's happening in their own backyard.
I think to add to that is
Rituparna, I just wanted you to add to what the
I think what's very scary is not just the journalists and the bloggers. Those are, you expect that, but the fact that this doctor he mentioned, who was just asking for proper PPE protection, he was tending to patients. We are in the middle of a pandemic, but no, you have to stop your humanitarian work and come with us. And that just shows you what it's just out there. Are you for the people or are you for your ego? Not that anybody needs to know that, but it's just really scary, because these are not just people who are talking. He's out there saving lives. He's working 24/7. We all know what I'm forgetting the doctor's name, but the one
Dr. Indranil Khan, yeah.
Yes, who was just, all he did was ask on Twitter for proper equipment instead of Donald Duck raincoats, and it's really hilarious. And yeah, it just says how scary, all of this is.
So what is your take on this? Do you feel now that with the TMC doing all this, and with the TMC government has been in power, this is not even its first term; it's been in power really long time now. So do you think now the BJP is a good viable alternative that Bengal can now finally look at? If maybe will that be any respite from this, or do you think it's the devil versus the deep sea?
For very long, Pallavi, the one of the things that have been that people have consistently said in Bengal, not just politicians, even the citizens, that it's Kendred dosh, as in the center is to blame, because the party at the center is has not been for a very long time the party that rules the states. You'd be surprised that even my house help in my in my parents' home, and even in the villages that I have gone to, in the course of the book, they say this now, that we need the same party to rule the center and the state, so that all the central government schemes benefit us too. Right, and our politicians here can't blame it on the center. We have had enough. We have spent enough time having local politicians blame everything that's going wrong on the center. Okay, so I think that's one of the things that is that I think the people who are craving for change are wanting, to have the same party rule that's ruling the center rule the state. It is a very Bengal. In living memory. I have never. I could not even imagine even a few years back that BJP will come to Bengal. So it's going to be a very, very different political experiment. But I think if it does happen, or even if, like I said, BJP were to do exceptionally well and be this very, very powerful opposition, I think you have to wait and see how that pans out. Because we have had the same. See, Mamata is not the left, but she's, as is often said, she's left of the left. She has taken so many things from the left playbook. So we have had so many years on the left. If there's another ideology that is coming in, I think it would be interesting to watch. Like I said, so whether it's good or bad is very subjective, but I think it would be an interesting experiment to watch if the BJP were to come to power in Bengal.
Yeah, speaking of house help, where I live, most people here work are from Darjeeling. In fact, they're from this tiny little village in Darjeeling, close to Darjeeling, called Mirik. And they, they talk about, which I feel, Darjeeling, and then this part of Bengal is just, Bengal on paper. It's not even really integrated with the state.
Very interesting point, yes.
And they keep talking about how these people who work in these tea plantation, in the tea plantation sector, they get paid 1,000 rupees a week, and it's a physically challenging job, and they don't get any kind of social security. There are no minimum wages, and if you fall ill, like if you fall critically ill, they recommend you to go to a hospital all the way in Vellore. So in all of Bengal, there isn't a state hospital of quality that can give them good healthcare services, which is such a shame after so many years of independence.
Yeah, and don't forget that North Bengal is one of the places where the BJP has done well in recent times, and they sort of they are hoping to retain that advantage electorally. It's interesting because of the Bhadralok Bengali image that is.
Do you think Bengal is getting crushed under the image that it's created over the years, and it's sort of detached from the realities on ground, poetically and otherwise?
I would think so, because like you said, who's talking about these people? Nobody's talking about them. Like who did you, for instance, know that there is a 300-year-old Ram temple? You may go there, you may not go there. You may choose to worship Ram, you may choose not to worship Ram. That's fine. But to say that there's no sense of Ram in Bengal, that's not true. Yes, there may not be a sense of Ram in your ecosystem, in the circles you move in, and that's fine, absolutely fine. But to make a sweeping statement like, oh, there was no Ram in Bengal, or there's no religiosity in Bengal, or everybody's secular, everybody's necessarily a beef eater, these are not true. I mean, there are people who eat beef in Kolkata. There are many people who even in Kolkata don't eat beef, and they for religious reason, and that's fine. I mean, but there is this constant bombardment of of images and sentences that Bengal is this way. No, I mean, parts of Kolkata are that way, and you'd be surprised that even some of those parts have changed. It's not as if it's only outside Kolkata that the BJP has made a dent. Within Kolkata, in very genteel circles, BJP sort of is there are very strong supporters of the BJP.
Yeah. So also, this point you said about blaming the Kendra, blaming the center. Bengal also has a debt problem. You've actually mentioned that at the end of 2017, Bengal had the second highest debt GSDP ratio at 33.8%. So, how do you think that's going to impact votes? Do you think people are voting on economic realities in this election, or do you think it's going to be?
Of course. I mean, one of the main things the BJP will have to put out, if we'll have to solve if it comes to power, is this issue. They will definitely have to lift, bring back Bengal. I mean, when you talk Bengali, you only talk culture. I mean, but I think there has been enough culture talk. Then it needs to be factories in Bengal. There needs to be jobs in Bengal. Bengal needs to be an industry hub. All of those things the BJP definitely needs to look into, or Ms. Banerjee needs to look into if she gets another term. See, culture is a great thing, but it's one of the things I keep saying, that what can be a great plus is basically an excuse for not being other things. So you are lazy, you won't work, but you say that, but so or so, I'm very cultured. That can't be a calling card. It's great if you're cultured. It's great if you have a sense of literature. It's great if you listen to good music. But unless you're somebody who only writes books or only sings, you also have to work. So that the work ethos has to come back to Bengal. I mean, there's also a stereotype of the Bengali outside Bengal as somebody who's lazy and who's a shirker and who's only going to talk big and not work. You're from Delhi. You know how at least some Bengalis are looked at.
It's a very Chatterjee Park idea of the whole understanding of Bengal for any non-Bengali is a very Chatterjee Park school of thought.
I stay in Chatterjee Park, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, I thought as much. I thought as much.
Yeah, but there's a stereotype.
I mean, that you get what I'm saying.
Yes, there's a stereotype of the Bengali.
One kind of very homogeneous, like this is Bengal, and like this is what it's writing, reading, dancing, singing, a lot of that. What about you, Rituparna? Can you shed some light on this?
Well, we've already talked about it, but I would be still scared if the BJP wins, although I guess everything is still going that way. I personally know.
But you don't live in Bengal. You live in
but there are other mates, who have come to me just crying when the CA stuff happened. Where are we going to get these papers from? The whole, all of them coming from Bangladesh over a generation. How are you going to produce all of this? So we cannot just say one thing will work just because we really need change. If it had to happen, something would have happened. So I don't know. It's not. It's always gray, isn't it? So I'm not positive anyway. Whoever wins, I think the people of Bengal have already lost, like we were talking earlier off camera.
Rituparna is resigned to her fate, and that she's just pessimistic about both the parties. There's really no hope in the system.
At some point, people have to take.
I sense one nota vote coming out of Rituparna.
I think at some point people have to take responsibility. I think that's what happens when you live in America for 14 years, especially in Silicon Valley. You do not rely on the government so much. That's why we have. If you talk to a lot of kids, they all want to be entrepreneurs because they will just make their way, do whatever they have to do. You cannot just, even when Amphan happened, left, right, and center, it was all these kids I know of who came, who collected stuff. They may say that, oh, we are CPIM volunteers or leftist or not, but the point is they came together. They came together as a community, and
I think even during COVID, civil society is teaching governments all over, whether it's the central government or multiple state governments, not a lesson, but like inspiring them to sort of work closely with the people, and they're far more realistic. The last mile of governance when it comes from civil society, it has a completely different impact. That's been seen recently in India as well.
That's right. Governments just seem to come in the way. So unless we work together.
It's an interesting perspective.
I'm extremely excited about Bengal. I think it's
yeah, these are very, like, interestingly, you've written that the Bengalis are extremely, Bengalis have, this is actually a Sandeep Ghosh tweet.
Yeah, bipolarity, yes.
But Bengalis are always been bipolar. So I can see how bipolar, Bengalis right here on my screen. One is extremely pessimistic, the other is so excited about what's going on.
I'm extremely excited. I think it's a great time. Whoever wins, I think it's good. Next couple of years is going to be very interesting. Because there's so much social churn that's happening that's very interesting to observe. Because there has been, Pallavi, I can speak for myself, there has been so much of sameness, in the discourse since the first 26 years of my life in Kolkata. And now, to even to even hear these things, a different point of view, it's extremely interesting to hear so many voices. You mentioned North Bengal. You were aware of North Bengal. You would go to Shiliguri, where my mother comes from, and there you would from there you would go to Darjeeling, and you'd watch the sunset. So I mean, but there are also people their voices for a very so-called secular liberal space that Kolkata is. How many of these voices did you really hear? There's something interesting I want to tell you. A friend of mine. Good writer, great journalist, writes for the foreign press. So she keeps writing about the Armenian experience in Kolkata, the Muslim experience, and all of that. So we were talking, and I was writing my book, and I told her that, do you know what's happening in Koshba, which is a South Kolkata neighborhood, but which is a kind of a lower middle class neighborhood. And I told her about partition history, and I said, great to talk about the Armenian experience and sort of some Bengalis think that they're very close to the French, they're like the French. So she immediately got very defensive, and she said, oh, but those are areas I can't go to. I'm a woman. I mean, how can you ask me these things? It's unsafe. So I said, yeah, but it's like an auto ride away from your place to there in broad daylight. I'm sure you can go there. And it's great to talk about the Armenians, but it's also perhaps interesting to look at your own people. How people in different neighborhoods within the city-state, forget the rest of Bengal. So, I mean, it's great to talk about, to think, to compare yourselves to the French, to be to have breakfast at Fury's, to sing Ravindra Sangeet and go to Oxford bookstore, an evening party at someplace else. All of that is great. But there are other realities, there are other voices. There's a lot of democracy is also chaos, There's more participation in a democratic system, the more the chaos. But that also makes it very, very, very interesting. Why would I hear the same kind of thing for 34 years and counting, There needs to be other kinds of voices, and not just politically, socially, other kinds of voices that come up. I think that in itself is very interesting. You may not agree with much of it, that's fine. But why will you deny them their space?
Socially, I agree with it. Politically, I don't know.
That's interesting. That's absolutely okay. That's absolutely okay. I mean, you anyway won't vote here, so it's fine.
so there's no threat coming in from your end.
No. I mean, either way, like I said, whoever wins, whether it's Mamata Banerjee who retains, and it's not just the BJP. I mean, for instance, Mamata Banerjee gave a ticket to Monoranjan Bapari. That in itself is a great thing. I mean, who would have thought that somebody from that background? You have so many success stories of people who come out of nowhere in politics, and it's not just Mr. Modi or Ms. Banerjee. Across parties, across levels, people come from nowhere and become something. But you would not find a Monoranjan Bapari necessarily. You won't find a beggar boy who was sodomized by a policeman as a child, who then went on to become an axle in frustration, who survived Morichapi before that, then became a rickshaw puller, then became a writer, and now, so imagine his journey, fascinating journey. His autobiography is so famous now, and so
Absolutely,
you
yeah.
know, for Mamata Banerjee to acknowledge that and give him a ticket, and for that, he's also the chairman. I think this happened September last year, chairman of Dalit Sahitya Academy. So for Mamata Banerjee to acknowledge somebody like him and sort of give him a party ticket, it's very interesting. So it's not just BJP that's doing it. I'm saying that the fact that these voices are coming out, these conversations are happening, that's extremely interesting. And
Yeah.
whichever party Monoranjan Bapari belongs to, and now he belongs to the Trinamool Congress, the fact that his growls against the Bhadralok Bengali, he says that even after I was called and sort of honored at Jaipur Literary Festival, I had to carry on as a cook in a government setup. They didn't think that I'm worthy of anything else because I'm. And why is it? Is this because I'm a Chota Lok? I mean, these conversations need to be mainstreamed. Okay, this
Yeah.
is for a people who pride themselves for being different from others. Why should these conversations not take center stage? For instance, Bengali, Kolkata is an extremely secular space, but why was Taslima Nasreen forced out of Kolkata? I mean, she sought refuge in Kolkata.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why did she have to come
Yeah.
and settle in Delhi? Because of some random fatwa. So these conversations need to come out. It's not just politics. The fact that it's happening in and around the 2021 elections, and it started even before that, I think is extremely to stay as a very liberal secular space, and where everything is right, is not the right approach. I think you need to sort of scratch the surface, see what's below. That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah,
So it's not
I think the
whoever wins or
secular
loses.
liberal space
Yeah,
is obviously necessary, like it's much needed. But
yeah,
then to also assess that the secular liberal space you have may not be inclusive and may not represent everybody's reality, and maybe
yeah.
broaden it a little bit to bring other people that a secular liberal state can't be a bubble of sorts where you exist with your perfect ideas, but there's so much wrong outside which you've left unaddressed.
Yes.
That's right.
So
There's an
there are
yeah.
two. I mean, there's one question that I have. I'm sorry, you were saying something.
No.
You
I'm
want to
saying
go
that
on?
sort of there's something I read in a report in the New Indian Express. For instance, there's this village very close to Kolkata where this entire village came under Sharia law. Do you know this? So you can't play music there. You can play games. Now the secular liberal space won't sort of let this happen, but this happened. A New Indian Express report came out. I spoke to TMC MP Nusrat Jahan, and she was wonderful to speak to. She said
Yeah,
the right things, but if you go to her constituency in Boshirat, okay, if you go there not as a journalist with a mic, but if you go there as a common person, you will see and hear things which you may not like, which will affect your secular liberal space. So to just say that okay, everything is fine in Kolkata and much of Bengal is a wrong
yeah,
assumption.
absolutely. So, more than 3 decades of left rule, Jyoti Basu would fan these pro-labor sentiments, and the industry
Yeah,
was the villain at that
yeah,
time. The
yeah,
industry can no longer afford to be the villain because you need the industry for survival now. Now,
yeah, yeah.
coming to, we've seen two tenures of, I mean, we're in the second tenure of the Modi government right now. The first one was more focused on economic development. The narrative was more on the Gujarat model and the economic development. Now, the second term has brought in, aspects like CAA or NRC and there's 370, and all of this has also happened. So, do you think,
Yeah.
these debates have sort of taken the attention away from, say, economic development, or do you think they parallelly coexist in the
I think
BJP's
they
language?
parallelly coexist, and BJP will have to sort of BJP will have to keep its focus on the economy. Absolutely, because that's what affects everyday life. That's what affects lives of you and me and everybody else. So I think that cannot be derailed. That has to always have center stage,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and definitely in Bengal.
Yeah, Rituparna, my one question to you is that a lot of, like, because you may be watching a lot of news on Bengal elections in the US, so a lot of film stars like Mithun Chakrabarti, coming and making in statements like "I'm a cobra," and do you think that sort of reduces an important election to something so non-serious and makes it a joke? Because I mean, even Mamata Banerjee is guilty of it. She floats a lot of non-serious candidates from very, like, for instance, the seat that she won, Jadavpur, and which was her historic victory, and Mimi Chakrabarti contested
Music was
election from
definitely,
there.
yeah.
So from the same seat. So do you think this is sort of thing that kind of mocks the seriousness of democracy and seriousness of what is going on and what it means to people of Bengal?
Well, first things first, there are no elections in the world like Indian elections. They're so entertaining. You don't need
Yeah.
the movies or anything. But and of course it mocks it, but you have to see that it also appeals to what I guess would be called, I don't like these terms, but to a certain section of society, maybe not to the liberals or, as Deep puts it, people like me, but it would appeal to the masses, the type of people who would watch certain type of serials or something. They can relate to them. It's hilarious, but there's been a lot of thought, a lot of marketing strategy into it. It's not as simple as it seems.
Yeah.
So it's deliberate. It will win votes. It will be populist. You and I are not doing it, right? Mithun Chakrabarti is going there. So when he goes as Cobra, it's just really solid marketing strategy.
Deep, do you think he has mass appeal,
Well,
and do you think strategies like these kind of end up working for parties in elections like these, which are
it, it, they do,
high
they
on
do. I
energy?
do have to admit, I'm a huge fan of Mithun Chakraborty. He's a huge fan since childhood. There's a dialogue. Everybody's talking about the Cobra dialogue. There's a dialogue, "Marbo ekhane lash porbe shoshane," which means that I'll kill you here. Your body is going to land up in the Shamshan Ghat. Very popular dialogue. I'm a huge fan of Mithun
It's a
Chakraborty.
really poor translation, but
Yeah. I mean, it's lost in translation, but Marvekane Lashpur Shoshana is like is up there in film dialogue history. So, yeah, but sort of, yeah, there's a lot of drama in Indian elections, and yeah, both parties are doing it. Mamata Banerjee did it with Nusrat Jahan and Mimi Chakravarti. uh, I was in a slightly different context. I was discussing this with a friend of mine today itself. I was saying, you need to perhaps these people need to perhaps learn from the film stars in the South. The Jayalalitha or MGR. When they were in films, they were these huge superstars. But when they came to politics was their only focus. So
Yes, of
yes,
course.
you may come into politics because you are somebody, but once there, if you're not serious,
Yeah,
uh, I think you're going to fade away, and it's going to cost you because the polity is so divided that if you have a huge fan base and if you support one party, if you join one party, so people who are in the other party are going to hate you. So they might could have been your fans. Like Midun is getting a lot of hate now, a lot of hate. All kinds of things are being said about him, and many of the things perhaps are being said by people who are fans of him. So if Mithun were to be in politics seriously and do this seriously, I think he or anyone else for
yeah,
that matter would have to take it very seriously. Would have to see
yeah,
to it that what they're saying, all these dialogues before
yeah,
elections will have to be translated into action if they get elected, or if their party comes to power. So yeah, so that remains. But during elections, of course, I mean, for journalists or writers, I think there's a lot of drama.
yeah,
If you go to a
okay.
Mithun rally, for instance, I mean, it's
yeah,
extremely interesting, unless you're very snooty,
yeah,
and you think it's
yeah,
lowbrow and Chotolokish to sort of listen to such things. But I think it's a lot of drama to hear this. There was I was what there's this Khala Hobe slogan of Trinamool. It's become
yeah.
humongously popular. BJP has come out with a counter on WhatsApp.
I don't
I
know.
saw some remote village. I don't know whether it's sort of it is it has been morphed or whatever. There was this dancer, female dancer, in a crowd of very lecherous men, and Khala Habe
Yeah.
is playing in the background. So I mean, it's crazy what's happening in Bengal, and the film stars, actors and actresses, they add to the drama, and that's fine, I guess. But
Yeah.
issues
But
will also, I
coming
mean,
coming to
They're
something
not
serious,
recognized Bengal.
these are also, yeah. Coming to something serious, both of you, like these are very unruly party carders as well.
Yeah.
The TMC is an unruly bunch. They have been indulging in all kinds of gundaism, and it's coming up again and again in the press also. And the BJP in Bengal is also responding to the TMC's, sort of violence and sort of mischief. So how
Yeah.
do you think this will play out? Do you think this gets intense, and is there any check on any kind of violence that takes place, especially in these smaller pockets and these extremely remote pockets?
Bengal has had a
Carry
very
out.
Bengal has had a, I don't know how, for a, if you look at Bengalis outside Bengal, you would perhaps think of them as very genteel, literature loving,
Yes, yes, I agree.
singing,
Especially
dancing
Bengalis
people.
in journalism. Like I've only worked so much with Bengali editors, and
Yeah, yeah,
they're French.
yeah, very French. But
Yes.
Not all
outside that,
Parisians. I always want
yeah,
to qualify that. Even that
now,
is another. We think all French are
Yeah,
the same.
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So outside their tiny cabins, there's a very different reality.
Yeah,
Bengal has had very bloody political history.
yeah,
I don't know how people who it's a separate study in itself. How people who are so much in love with literature, and all things artsy, are so violent when it comes to election time. And this election has been no different.
yeah,
Uh, in fact, it's a bit surprising. The BJP has not been able to. If reports that I've read are true, BJP has not been able to counter that violence that the TMC
yeah.
cadre has allegedly inflicted on them. There's so many deaths that are being reported and bodies hanging from the tree.
Yeah.
There has been some
Which
violence
is
from the
what is
QT.
scary, because this has been a
Yeah.
constant, and since
Yes.
2019 it's been a constant,
Yes, if you
or
you'd
even
see
before
newspaper,
that
very
perhaps, but it's been being
so-called
reported
neutral
since
media
then.
would also report these things, like
Yeah,
that continuous violence. But like I said, Bengal has had a history of political violence, so it's not something that's new. And also, if there's a threat, see, this 2019 really changed the game, Pallavi.
yeah,
BJP did so well in the Lok Sabha elections from Bengal. Okay,
yeah.
so that made everybody sit up and take
I
notice.
mean, better than
I have
expected.
much better than expected. I would tell you this, that I had a sense they would do it, so I had predicted this in a tweet. Okay, and I have gone wrong with my predictions many times, but I knew BJP is going to do very well. So when I did the tweet, people called me and said, sort of, you're going to eat humble pie, and this is rubbish. Not even 10 seats. And then BJP did what they did. That really changed the game.
Yeah.
So, that made people sit up and take notice. Like you said, a while ago, that it's also the RSS. So, that how
Yeah,
RSS
I
has
was
been
just going to,
working on the
come to
ground.
that, like a Sunil
Yeah.
Deodhar like strategy that they had for the
Oh,
Northeast.
lovely.
Did they have
Yes,
something
yes, yes.
similar? Did they have something similar with, for Bengal? Because also culturally, if you look at the Hindu of Bengal and the Hindu that the RSS or the BJP talks about, there's a certain diversity there. So you do need a person who can hack through this system. Just
Yeah,
understanding the strategy there.
there is a report I quote from in the book where I've said this Ekal Vidyalaya,
Yeah,
a
Ekal
TMC
Vidyalaya.
local, yeah, TMC local leader's son used to go to that Vidyalaya, and that he had no idea that it is in some way related to the RSS. So it's
Yeah,
not just Mr. Modi and Shah. RSS has been working on the ground for many, many years. There's this there's this organization called the Hindu Samhiti, yeah, who Tapan Ghosh was
yeah,
their front man. He would work, among other things. One of the things he did was, if a Hindu boy fell in love with a Muslim girl and wanted to get married without converting, he would give them protection. Now that's a reality of Bengal. Okay, so now imagine an organization which is very big, which you and I didn't know about for very long, which is working for many, many years on the ground outside
yeah,
Kolkata like this. So these are so yeah, a lot of things are coming out now, which existed in the ground, which were not talked about, reported
yeah.
about in the mainstream press, uh, and because of that, uh, and what the BJP did in 2019, the seats it won, I think that has also led to this violence, and I don't think it's going to get any better. I think there is going to be violence. It's going to get very, very bloody.
Yeah. Uh, Also, this election is beyond Kolkata, like you said. It's beyond.
Yeah.
It's probably melted the borders of Kolkata and brought Bengal together. And
Huh.
the kind of Bengal that we are seeing through these elections, we haven't seen before. And new stories are emerging from new districts almost every other day, which is
Yeah.
what state elections in India do. They teach you a lot
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
entire state.
Yeah.
That you know
Yeah.
how Gujarat is beyond Ahmedabad, or Madhya
Yeah.
Pradesh is beyond Bhopal, and similarly like Kolkata even. So,
Yeah.
Rituparna, your reading of this of what Deep has just said right now, that Bengal had a history of this violence, and the elections can get like extremely intense, and the political battles in Bengal can get, and they parallelly exist with the slow Badrilok life.
It's just coming into the limelight now. It's always been there. So once again, it's how do we put it? Of course, it's scary, but if there is an illness, you need the diagnosis first. So it's a bit like that. It's just surfacing. It's always been there. I think it's really healthy though that we come to know what's happening outside, and that's what these elections have done.
Yeah.
Pallavi, elections, winning Bengal, I mean, every political party, whether it was the left or Mamata
Yeah.
Banerjee, everybody had to focus
Yeah.
outside Kolkata to win Bengal. So it's not as if
Yeah.
Bengal is suddenly in focus. Bengal was always in focus electorally. It's just that the other narratives are now being
Yeah.
mainstreamed. Now
Yeah.
suddenly people are saying things which they didn't say earlier. So, and interestingly, I think not just in Bengal, I think if you have to counter any opposition space, that has to electorally counter the BJP, not just in op-ed columns in our newspapers or in the New York Times and Washington Post. We'll have to we'll have to go beyond this very easy narrative of fascist and non-fascist, secular and communal. I think that won't work. You will
Yeah.
have to recognize the various divisions in society. You'll have to recognize various other voices that want to now that are crying now to sort of be heard. There's going to be chaos. You have to navigate through the chaos. So just it's very simplistic to sort of it may not be true. I don't want to get into that, but it's true sometimes. It's not untrue sometimes. But to simply say, oh, this is a fascist party or this is a communal party, I think won't. So you will just keep losing election after election, which has been happening for a while now. Because I think India has moved beyond easy narratives, and I think you have to recognize people and not just say blanket things like, "Oh, I'm secular," and I'm because when it's a nice words. I mean, how did they become dirty words? You have to examine that. Why is it wrong suddenly to be liberal? Because I think for a lot many of us, there's inherent hypocrisy. I mean, we say some things we don't practice
It's
it.
not wrong to be. It's not wrong to be liberal. It's
Is it
good to be
No, no,
liberal.
absolutely not.
In
I'm
any
saying
in any
why is it?
context, at any time,
No,
it's always good to be
no.
liberal.
I'm saying that you need to also walk the talk. Like I
You're talking
said,
about the interpretation of the word liberal, and how
no,
being
no,
liberal doesn't
it's
mean you limit your concerns to what's happening in the cities and your cozy
yes,
life. Yes.
yes. No, it's the word is fine. I'm saying that
Yeah.
why is it under so much attack?
Yeah.
It is under so much attack because perhaps you're not practicing what you preached. Perhaps you're so limited. You're not looking beyond the obvious.
Yeah. It
I
is
think that
strange
you have to
that a
do now.
state which has had left rule for so long, and left is about grassroots politics, and left is about Operation Varga. You're getting into the homes of peasants, you're documenting their papers, and you're ensuring that they get land and that they get compensated, and that they that you better their lives. So
Yeah.
you come from a state like that, and then suddenly the left has lost touch with the grassroots. So it's a little, complicated. Bengal's election, like you've said, it's going to be a very tough election to poll. Even the history of Bengal politics, its evolution is very complicated to understand. That these are things that you stand for, and these are things that you absolutely have no connect with. So where did the disconnect happen?
The disconnect has been happening for a while. So for instance, if you are talking about the left, if they only concentrated, like you said, on if one of the big things they did was Operation Varga, and it was successful for a while, it was a very interesting thing they did. Then imagine if you were to kill 14 people alone in Nandigram in
Yeah.
police fire.
Exactly.
Okay, and these are people you have not been able to convince them that if you're selling your land to a chemical hub or in Shingur to a small car factory, you will benefit.
Yeah.
So if
Exactly.
you for so long, this is the constituency of milk. Suddenly you course correct and you decide that industry should come, which was the right thing to do. But was it done necessarily done the right way? So suddenly you said, no, 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 we have made historic mistakes. So now we are going to take a U-turn, and we are going to bring in industry. But how do you bring in industry? Do you suddenly unleash that kind of violence? Now,
Yeah.
left had been in power, and there was also a certain kind of arrogance that had crept in, because in 77 you come to power, 1779 you do Morijjapi, almost no one talks about it. Some papers report it, then some books are written, they vanish. You still can't find them. You had Bantala massacre, you had massacre after massacre. You burned
Yeah.
Ananda Margis on a bridge. You just simply set them on fire, and this is in the heart of Kolkata. And so I think there was a certain kind of arrogance that you can from time to time unleash this kind of unthinkable violence, and
Yeah.
people are going to eventually forget about them and vote you back to power. But of course, things changed, and when Nandigram and Shingur happened, I think they realized that okay, things won't be the same ever again. And Mamata Banerjee, like I said, Mamata Banerjee rose to power through that, by exposing the left. But did she sort of really change things? I will know. Or is Bengal ready for another change?
Bengal is, perhaps the only state where a lot of leaders are moving blanket from, from left to right. They're jumping
Yeah,
from
yeah.
CPM to
Yes,
BJP, which is so interesting. Like Shankar Ghosh from Darjeeling, in fact, he's joined BJP. So it's extremely
yes.
strange how the cadres are, sort of merging in a
Not
state
just
like
the
Bengal,
cadres,
which
some
makes,
very top leaders have also
yeah,
sort of
top leaders
left.
even, yeah, top
Card,
leaders
card
even. In
carrying
fact, most of
communists who are now in the
disgruntled,
BJP.
TMC, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely, which is
I
which
mean,
is so
middle,
which is absolutely
middle.
fascinating to see. Now I have one closing question for Deep, is that, and
Yeah.
Rituparna, even for you, that how things BJP is broadly accused of, that it becomes a police state, and the issues are like CAA or 370, and not our development, and not like schools and education. And this is a state election at the end of the day. We also have to look at state policies. So like where the kind of, they also need a very state centric approach, a leader who's acceptable in the state, or new policies, new schemes, and how they're going to be implementing them. So, do you think, because we're of course taking one side or the other, how do you think this is going to, if the BJP does come into power, how do you think this is going to play out? And the other thing is that, if in the another scenario which you've also discussed, is that if they get 100 seats, and I believe it's a 294 seat, unless some delimitation has happened. It's 294 seats. So if they get 100 seats, and the other are with the TMC, let's give a few to independents. Do you think it's going to be a terribly unstable government, given the kind of friction this election has seen?
I'll go first. Rituparna, you want to go first?
Anything. Second aspect first, probably the kind of, like, what kind of an unstable government will this
I
be
think
if
it's going
you
to be
have
very
the
unstable. If the BJP were
opposing.
to win 100 seats or more,
So there
slightly
should be
more, I
full
think
majority to either the TMC or the BJP.
that is not happening, Pallavi. I
It's
don't
not
think that's
happening.
happening. Yeah, I think with some degree of certainty, I can say that that's not happening. Even if BJP is not winning, I don't think it's going to be TMC all the way. I don't think that's, and I think it will be terribly, terribly chaotic for Bengal if the BJP were to win 100 seats and more. Because I sensed, I sort of stopped the book in September because I had to give it to the publisher. They had to edit it, sort of
Yeah.
put it out to press. But I sensed a very anti-Trinamool, anti-Mamata Banerjee mood in the ground. I sensed wherever I went to, it was during Corona, and I moved, but I still moved around quite a bit. I sensed a very, very anti-Trinamool Congress government mood.
Are
But
they willing to accept BJP as an alternative?
yes, yes, they were at that time. But now, from September to now, things have changed, and
Yeah.
I, don't- I still keep going to Kolkata every once in a while. I keep talking to people. I'm on various WhatsApp groups, but I don't know whether Mamata Banerjee has been able to successfully dilute that sentiment that was so much against her. But even if she were to form the government again, I think it's going to be very, very chaotic.
Very tough. Okay.
Politically, societally, it's going to be very chaotic.
Rituparna.
Yeah, I agree with Deep on it being chaotic, but the whole CAA and all of that, there is genuine fear on the ground. And with Padrolok, with Chotolok, with a whole bunch of people, I'm not on, I'm not, on as many WhatsApp groups and Twitter feeds as Deep is, but we do talk to people, and if the BJP focuses on, economic development, which has been its charm for so many, if it does that, then there is some respite. Maybe some liberals might feel a little bit okay, we're wrong or whatever. But I don't know. I think with the whole CA stuff, everything's kind of there's a lot of fear. That's all I'll say. There's a lot of fear. There are too many people without papers. I mean, we're talking of a country like India. So
you feel they're going to be evicted, and the fear of eviction is extremely real.
if a government, if a party scares people to that level before it has even come into power, in that area, I think that says a lot.
Yeah.
Government should be like a parent, not I don't want to use any words, but you get the drift. So there is very
Parents also differ.
That's a wonderful point. Actually, government should actually be like a parent, responsible for the citizens, and at least giving you your basic civic amenities, and your ensuring your social and economic progress at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I can only say that parents also differ. There are loving parents who sort of ignore their child's failures and misdemeanors, and there are slightly strict parents, No, but jokes apart, yes. I mean, if there are genuine concerns from a section of society,
but they're not addressed even. No, there are genuine concerns
that comes upon needs to address this. Of course. Yes, I think
which
it's
has
very
not
wrong
happened, by the way. With CAA, it has not happened.
Yes,
one of the problems is that people, even if there are assumptions,
yes,
they are not addressed.
Yes. So if there are fears, I think there should be more effort should be put out in terms of messaging that these fears are unfounded and we are here for you. So whichever section of society that may be. So that's a point very, very well taken.
Sorry to interrupt. Not only messaging, but also in action.
Exactly. Because constantly making a certain section of society feel alienated, whether it is a certain caste or a certain religion or people from different communities, that sort of it divides society, and it affects brotherhood in ways that it might take years and years to repair the damage. So my another question that I had was about OAC. And how do you think where do you think the Muslim vote is going to swing, and whether OAC's entry is going to affect TMC negatively? Do you think
OAC was just asked in the India Today, just concluded India Today Conclave South, whether he had a secret pact with OAC is often accused of being having sided with the BJP. Yeah, but this time he was asked that do you have a secret pact with the Mamata Banerjee because you're not being so vocal about Bengal elections? Yeah. So he said, so he quipped that how many people can I possibly be having deals with? So the Muslim vote. Yes, I'm sure that's a concern for the BJP in constituencies where there's a sizable population of Muslims. But I think one of the things that have happened is there is also, again, the Muslims I don't think are going to necessarily vote as a homogeneous entity. I think to a certain degree, there has been a distinction made between Muslims who are from here, and Muslims have come from the other side of the border, illegally. And so I think that kind of distinction has been, to some extent, has been made. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
That's very interesting, because Bengal is one state where that has actually happened. because you
Yes.
have a border with Bangladesh where you have a divide
Yes.
between
Yes.
the Muslim on this side and the Muslim from the
Yes,
other
yes. Some
side.
of the conversations, for instance, for instance, if you look at if you hear Mr. Jahan, I mean, the things she says, yes, and some of the concerns are some of the things she says and does are absolutely okay. But are everybody there? You know, is for instance, in the if outside Kolkata, also in some places inside Kolkata, are those fears totally unfounded that if you go to a quote unquote a Muslim area, you know, like for instance, I'll tell you, and this is not stereotyping. This is something I saw in the height of Corona, and you know, Bengal is funny because Kolkata is also funny. I went and I saw people having fuchka, you know, when there was Corona, but there were people sort of wearing. Most people on the streets were wearing masks. I went to a particular area, and I'm, this is not a report. Okay, I went and saw it for myself in broad daylight. I went to a quote unquote sort of Muslim area. I could hardly see anybody wearing masks. So in this is in Kolkata. So how can there be?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's not. I mean, I don't know how we can interpret that.
no, whatever way you can interpret that, I have in fact
I
asked
don't
her.
think that has to do with like Muslims or any other area. I
But
think it
it's a
has
Muslim
a
majority area.
class. Yeah, but it
So
has
this
a
is the this
class
is so I asked
dimension of
this.
understanding
Yes.
a disease, whether this is good. Like in, for instance, in Bihar and so many places, like I saw in a
No, this
news
is not
channel
about
where
this.
one person is,
This is not.
taking
So,
another person's mask and saying, "Ye to
Pallavi,
hamara bhai hai." So it's
Pallavi,
like, yeah.
this is not about a community at all. What I'm saying is, as in terms of governance, if you let us, some people think that you know you can do that. It's perfectly fine to not obey laws. It's not the people's fault. It's the government's fault if you allow that, whichever community you are allowing it to. If it's a different experience outside Bengal for the majority
So you're
community,
saying
it's
the
as
police
wrong.
wasn't going after them because they were Muslim?
No, I won't say that. I just didn't see masks. I won't say whether police was not going after them. I won't say that they didn't do it. I won't be able to say it. But I can only say that I didn't see masks there. I think I could count how many masks I saw. So you know this what
See,
happens, and
masks aren't
threat
even
to
like
this
some
is
cultural agenda or something. It's just
no,
something which
this
is
is threat
you're
to their own
unaware
lives and
of.
lives of their family members. You know, this is not. But so the point I'm trying to make is that you know. So while Rituparna is saying that there are concerns over CA, there are concerns on the other side also of
I
non-urban
think drawing
spaces.
a conclusion like there are no masks. I don't know if that doesn't hold in my
It's not
opinion.
just
But like,
masks.
okay,
No,
that's
it's
the
not just
perspective.
masks. It's not just masks. Did you? There were news reports showing that when the police went to sort of enforce certain lockdown rules, they were beaten up. There were live feeds
I
showing
mean,
that
there were
in Bengal.
images from BJP Madhya Pradesh where
Of course,
campaign was
of
going
course, and
on
that
with
is as wrong.
a lot of these big
Yeah,
MP leaders,
that is
including
as
even
wrong. But
Jyotiraditya
politicians
Scindia,
will not
where
say anything.
no one was wearing a mask. So
Absolutely.
we just examine these little gatherings and say, oh, no mask in this mask in
This is
I
not a
don't think.
little gathering, by the way. It's a huge area in Kolkata, and this is mainstream Kolkata. This is not a little gathering. This is a very large area. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is there are concerns in every elections, and these concerns come to the fore. In every election, there are concerns and there are fault lines. Okay, which politicians typically tend to exploit. Now, I'll take you back since we are talking about this. I'll take you back to something Mamata Banerjee had said. Mamata Banerjee had said that Muslims are milch cows.
Milk cows.
So why will I anger them? Now they are equal
Yeah,
citizens. So why will you compare them to milch cows? You know,
yeah,
you sort of you govern in a way that they are uplifted.
yeah.
You look at their primary health, you look at their education, you see whether there's participation in jobs. Why will you compare them to milch cows? So now that's a concern. Now, uh, if somebody is saying that, look, we will treat them as equal citizens, but we won't allow this thing to happen. We won't allow certain degree of perceived lawlessness to carry on. Is that what they do when they come to power is a different thing, but is that necessarily wrong? It's not. So
I
yes,
think
while there are
I think
concerns regarding CA, I think there are
the handling of minorities. The problem is that you're either appeasing them or you're alienating them.
Yeah.
And
that's a
in
good
case of
point.
Mamata
Yes,
Banerjee, of course, it's like you're appeasing the Muslim, but if you look at it, vis-a-vis alienating the Muslim and sort of treating the Muslim as some kind of a miscreant or a
yes,
terrorist, or
yeah, yes.
people who don't belong
No,
to
that's
this land,
horribly
or
wrong.
constantly keeping them in
No two
fear,
ways about it.
is
That's horribly,
extremely
horribly wrong.
damaging to not just society, even the economy.
Of course. So that's horribly wrong. So you have to find a middle ground somewhere.
Do you see the middle ground happening anywhere in
We have to
Bengal?
hope. We have to, unlike Rituparna, I live in hope. We have to live in hope, and I think the BJP also, whatever little I sort of have spoken to some of their leaders, they also understand this, and I think. But you can only live. I'm not. Why just BJP? Even I think Mamata Banerjee, if she were to come back to power, she should also look at it. Look at this community not as milch cows. If she were to form a third term, she needs to really, really look at the community spread across Bengal with a kinder eye, not necessarily an eye that is looking at votes from the community.
I think
You,
along with
you
the
need to,
kinder eye, focusing
if
on
there is a
things like
focus
education and
on their
healthcare.
growth, yes, growth on their welfare. So I think that needs to happen. I mean, why is this community, large chunks of this community so backward and so poor? It's a concern. Why are there ghettos? It's a concern. It's a very big concern. I mean, not just in Bengal, in many parts of India, but definitely also in Bengal, because Bengal has traditionally said that we don't discriminate on the grounds of caste and religion. So why are such a large population of Muslims in such pitiable condition? Whichever party, whether Mamata gets another term or BJP comes to power, needs to definitely look into that.
I think these are highly polarizing times, and in these
Yeah.
times where of Hindutva and of the surging of the Hindu identity, it just even if you step out, of the ghetto, you don't get a house in a Hindu-dominated neighborhood. It comes with all kinds of challenges. The ghetto, more than the cause, is actually a consequence of what the rest of the society is not being able to provide to the modern Muslim. But at the same time, what governments also need to do is promote education among Muslims and ensure that they come out into the mainstream. And
Of course.
whether it's through jobs and even access to, like, you see systemic discrimination in most big cities even.
Yes, but that should not have. But by the same logic, since there have been
Yeah.
34 years of the left and 2 terms of the
Yeah.
TMC, that should not have been there, no?
But of course, no
So,
one is saying that the Indian Muslim is immune and can go about doing
no, no,
anything.
no, I'm saying that why is the condition of Muslims so pitiable in West Bengal? The
Yeah.
conversation around Muslims, by this logic, has always been the way it should be. Like, they're equal citizens, and they should have equal participation uh, in every sphere of life. Why then is their condition so pitiable, even in Bengal? I mean, that's a
It has
question
a
that
lot
needs
to
to be
do.
asked of liberal politics, so-called liberal
Yeah.
politics, that why in so many years, and it's not just one term, 34 long years
Yeah.
of the left, 2 terms of Ms.
Yeah.
Banerjee, why are you still looking at Muslims as milch cows?
Yeah.
I mean, you have
Absolutely.
established a binary. BJP is a communal party and it's
Absolutely.
fascist, but 34 years, I mean, 3 decades, and some more of Mamata Banerjee. And why is it? Why is it not? I mean, what stopped you? Nobody's stopping you. BJP didn't stop you in Bengal.
This is where the question of Muslims in India hits a roadblock in any
Yeah.
and every political narrative.
No, but it's
Simple
an
as that.
it's
Yeah.
something I ask myself, that why in my home state, like, you can talk about governments, but as Rituparna was saying, that there are governments and there are people. So the people don't think like that. If you were to take this, accept this statement, that the people in Bengal are not necessarily communal, or they don't think like that. They don't discriminate against Muslims. Then why is the condition of Muslims so pitiable in Bengal? A large chunk of them. Some girl,
Absolutely a very healthy state.
as great as a success story is, Nusrat Jahan's wonderful story of Nusrat Jahan becoming such a big star and then a Trinamool MP. I mean, she's just one example, and there may be some more. But that's a
Absolutely, like I said, like a cardboard cutout of secularism, but that's not
yes,
what's happening on
yes.
ground.
Yes, and why didn't it happen? The people are good. People are secular and liberal. Politics has been good so far. It's only now that the BJP has come in. So they need to ask that what happened, what went wrong. Why did Mamata Banerjee suddenly say that, they are milch cows, I'm not going to say anything to them?
Yeah.
So
Do you
these
think
are
this
important
comment
questions.
has? Do you think this comment is, been? How do you think it's been perceived by Muslims on ground? Do
I
you
think
think
some
they're
of them
aware
were
that
very,
this was
very
said?
angry,
And
very, very
yeah,
angry,
It's very
yeah,
extremely angry and disappointed that such a comment was made.
yeah, Rituparna.
yeah, it's very derogatory. It would be, it's insulting, honestly. If could be enough to, if people feel offended enough, which I would be if I were them, the votes might swing somewhere else altogether.
I will sort of slightly digress and say something about my
Yeah.
solo visit to the US where Rituparna stays. I was in the US for 15 days on a US State Department fellowship, and my sister stays near DC and she goes to work in New York. So when she saw my itinerary, she said, "Why are you going to all these southern states? Why are they taking you to southern states? I've never been there. I've been in the US for so long. Those states are all wrong. There's rampant racism there." But I actually liked my time in the South. I love Texas. I used to go out a lot more in Texas than I did in DC or California. I love Texas. And then I asked somebody, is it really different? Sort of, what actually is the difference between, say, a state like California and Texas, so, or DC for that matter. So she said, look, in DC, people are not going to talk this way. They will still look at you differently if you are brown or black. They're still going to think that you are not their equal, but they may not necessarily talk to you in that way. Whereas in the South, people are very in your face. So once or twice they're going to call you a blackie, or they're going to ask where you are from. But once that barrier is broken, and there would be some incidents here and there, but they happen in other places also. But once that barrier is broken, it's pretty chill. So once they know who you are, so she was half Puerto Rican, half black. So she said, "My skin color is such, and I am a certain way." So the gentleman in the 7-Eleven store, he couldn't make out where I am from. So he asked me, "So what are you? Are you black, white, brown? What are you?" So she said, you'd find this very objectionable, and you won't hear such a thing in New York, perhaps, or in some places in California. But in here, they will ask you directly in your face. But once they figure you out, it's pretty okay. So some of the things we do wrong is some of us don't say certain things, but those biases remain deep within, which is why things don't change on the ground. Some of us say pretty things, but we are as biased as perhaps the next person. So I think when we are talking in such absolute terms that okay, the condition of Muslims need to change in Bengal, and when we are asking questions why they have not changed in Bengal, we also need to look at inherent biases, which is also, if you remember, which is also what I wrote about in the book. Is left a casteist party? No. Is left a Manuvadi party? No. But left unleashed unspeakable violence on a population that was primarily Dalit. If that is not caste violence, what is? In
Yeah,
independent India, such a program of this scale has not happened. In fact, the
absolutely,
print, I need
absolutely.
to say it, the print said that it is
Yeah,
worse than 84 and 2002. No one talks about
yeah,
it. So,
yeah.
but that's caste violence. Now, there's some left leaders saying, oh, we don't, BJP is Manuvadi, we are different, we are communists, we don't believe in religion, we don't believe in caste. You won't cut it,
Absolutely.
because when you are in power, you unleashed unspeakable violence. So just saying
And a
beautiful
lot of
things is
families
not
in
enough.
Bengal have lived that violence and have,
Yes, they have lived that
witnessed
violence
their
now.
young, sons going into Naxalbari and experiencing
Yes,
that violence
yes,
and like ruining their lives, and generations
yes,
were lost to that
yes,
violence.
We
yes,
all have family members. I think almost every second household.
yes. And as funny as this may sound,
Yeah,
there are now families in Bengal where the father used to be, or the grandfather used to be very close to the Naxals, and the son has turned BJP. So so the point, there are splits within families also. The point I'm trying to make is, I think these are deeper questions that need to be asked. You need to look at the mirror and say that it's one thing to say good things, and that's important. You
Absolutely.
should always say good things, speak in a proper manner, not always perhaps imitate Mithun Chakravarti. But having said that, you should also believe and practice some of what you're saying. I think
Absolutely.
that has not happened in Bengal.
In fact, there was a story
Unimaginable
from
hypocrisy.
Hyderabad, on Oasis Party,
Yeah,
where a certain NGO is trying to modernize madrasas through
yeah,
computers and maths, and it is
yeah,
Oasis Party that does not let that happen in old Hyderabad. So you see the way old Hyderabad is, and the rest of it developed with technology and moved in with all these American firms coming in. So you see the disparity there, that there's something stopping, the politics which is supposedly designed for the Muslim. There seems to be a problem there.
yeah. No, see, politics will be the way politics is, the way politics was.
I think
Politicians
there has to be a
strive. Yeah,
change.
yeah.
I mean,
Politicians of
we are
all
seeing a
shapes
change
and
in Delhi.
sizes and colors.
We're seeing a change in Delhi for the better.
Yeah,
That it's
yeah.
absolutely governance focused.
The interesting. I was saying this in Shivaru's show the other day. We were talking about Mamata Banerjee playing the Hindu card, and
Yeah,
I drew an analogy with Arvind Kejriwal. I said, look, during the last sort of Delhi elections, much was made of Arvind Kejriwal singing the Hanuman Chalisa. But he was not a one-trick pony. He had so much more to show. He had
absolutely. And
free
when you listen
power,
to the Hanuman
free
Chalisa, I mean,
water,
you go to
yeah,
some,
good
yeah,
governments,
exactly.
very good sort of development in government schools. He had so much more to offer. So if there was mixed messaging, or so he thought, with the Shine Bagh protests, and because of it or
Yeah.
otherwise, he sang this Hanuman Chalisa. That is just one of the electoral tricks he pulled off. Now the
Actually,
question
that
was,
wasn't even an electoral trick. He had
right,
gone,
whatever
for an
way you look at
interview,
it,
and he was just asked to, chant the
yeah.
Hanuman Chalisa, and
And Hanuman
he
Chalisa, and he
knew
did.
it, and he's a
He
Hanuman,
knew it.
he's
He
a,
sang it.
Hanuman Bhakt,
Yes,
so he
yes,
did it.
yes. Right. So, but so I said this to Shivaru in the context of
Yeah,
Mamata Banerjee going to Nandigram and saying that I'm a Hindu Brahmin. Now,
yeah.
this is the BJP's trap, because BJP has
It's
established itself as a
absolutely,
Hindu party.
now I think this conversation, it's coming full circle, that she fallen into the BJP's trap,
Of
because
course, she
that
has. I mean,
statement is being
the
celebrated, and a lot of people are not calling it out as a caste statement.
Yes. Now the point is that this is the BJP. BJP has established itself as a Hindu party. The moment she or Rahul
Yeah,
Gandhi or anybody comes and says that, oh, I am also a Hindu, you are playing the BJP's game,
yeah.
and you will come a very distant second or third, because BJP has so much advantage in this. But the point is that, but that's also okay. But that cannot be the only thing you're saying. Now, what has changed? That Mamata Banerjee came. Nandigram was the epicenter of Mamata Banerjee's fight against the left,
Yeah,
right? And now you have to go to that same Nandigram and say you are a Hindu Brahmin. You should not be. You should
absolutely.
not have had to say that. You should just say, "I am Mamata Banerjee. I am your own daughter, and I am back. You sided with me. I stood with you,
Yeah.
and we won Bengal from Shingur and Nandigram. Right? We took on the left. We defeated the left. Why does she go and have to say something you traditionally associate with the BJP? That I'm a Hindu. I'm this and
That's
that.
probably because there's anti-incumbency, and the schemes
Huge
haven't
anti-independent.
worked on
Is
ground.
that not?
What
Yes. Is
Arvind
that not
Kejriwal
a?
had behind him was a report
Yes.
card, and was a work that he did in one
Right.
term only.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think you have to see it from that prism. That is she falling into the BJP's trap?
Rituparna, your take.
I think from an outsider's perspective, when she resorted to tricks like that, she kind of lost credibility. And these are the kind of things that that affect, how you don't need to go down to what others are doing. Just focus on development, focus on that. And Arvind Kejriwal, of course, has completely transformed Delhi so much. So I don't even know if it's a fair comparison in any way. As long as whoever focuses on development will probably be able to, stay in power. I think that's what people want at the end of the day. When these, Naxalbari, kids of parents who are Naxalites are pro BJP, they are probably there for identity, for just economic growth. They want to be proud of Bengal. They don't want it to be looked down as, oh, this is where the lights go off and everything is low and whatever. They want to be proud. They want it to be like Bombay or whatever. The internet has brought the whole world to everybody's palm of your hand. So they want to feel proud. That's how the urban kids feel, and to them that is more important. And there's also a lot of alienation, and I would always go to the kids because there are more young people there. If there's something they can identify with, and if they identify with not my politics, but the Hindu identity, and if that is bringing you economic growth, it's a win-win for them. So it works at very deep psychological levels. It's not, and I wish the politicians would use it and kind of cater to that rather than to the economic development.
But Pallavi, it's true. I mean, you have to look at development, but it's not just development. It is also a sense of your identity, which is coming out this time in Bengal. There was a bit of a local controversy in Bengal over this actress, Shayani Ghosh, who shared a meme on her Facebook page, I think, or Twitter feed, of a cartoon where somebody's putting a condom on a shivling. Okay, so a large section of Kolkata sort of rose against it. There was a section that supported her. Now she's got a party ticket from the TMC. She's a popular face, I believe, and she's got a ticket from the TMC. So as it happens, instantly memes were being made, and so she visited soon after being declared a candidate. She visited a Shiv Mandir and put water or flour on shivling. Okay, so the same person who was sharing a meme where you're putting a condom on a shivling is now, after getting a ticket, is now sort of trying to perhaps do damage control or assert the fact that she is also a Hindu who can also be a Shiv Bhakt. Now this is a complete beach. I don't know whether she's going to win, lose, how popular she's going to be with her constituency. But the point is, there's a BJP came and she's walked into that trap. So it's not just development; it's also a question of identity. I think it's all very fine to be non-religious, to not really have a overarching sense of your religious identity. That's absolutely okay. But it is absolutely also okay to have a sense of your religious identity. So if you have had a mainstream discourse where you have, and I have done it, I'm for many years I used to, and on Twitter, and sometimes all those old tweets are dug up, and I have laughed at people who had Hindus who have been very vocal about their religious identity. I have done those tweets. I have written those posts, not too long ago also. Now you have to realize that it's absolutely okay for you to feel that, but and there's freedom of expression. You can write also, but it also affects people. Or also, when you're saying that, you're perhaps saying for speaking about yourself or people like you who may feel that. But there's also a large section of people in Bengal also who are aware of their religious identity. To just say that the BJP, if it comes to power, or anybody, if Mamata Banerjee were to retain power, they would be in power only if they are going to bring in development, is not true. There is also a strong sense of identity, and religion is one of them. And in Bengal, this is especially true because you don't find too many examples. Maybe it's a little bit in the south of too many examples of a particular religion being derided as a fashion statement, and which is okay.
It's happening in her political rallies as well. But I think the opposition is more to the BJP's interpretation and the loaded statement of Jai Shri Ram.
It's also a very Kolkata interpretation of the BJP. It's like I said, there's a 300-year-old Ram temple just outside Kolkata. People are not talking about it. They're saying Jai Shri Ram is, oh, there's no sense of Ram. That's not true. I mean, there are gods and gods and gods. There's of course a fear that the BJP will bring in some sort of homogeneity in Bengal in its approach to Hinduism. But having said that, there is also a sense that I have friends who are now openly coming on Facebook and Twitter and not just declaring their love for the BJP and their support for the party, but also very openly saying that, okay, I go to this temple, and what is wrong if I post a selfie of myself in front of a temple? and it's interesting to watch. I mean, it may not be your idea or mine. I don't post selfies outside a
So
temple.
basically, essentially, what
But
happened to the
this
Indians
is also a question of
in
identity.
2014 onwards is now happening to the Bengali.
Yes, there's a sense of your religious identity that's coming out, and that is not necessarily a bad thing, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It may not, it is, if you're saying you're Hindu, does it necessarily mean you're being communal? No, you're just saying you're Hindu and you take pride in your religious identity. That to that extent it's fine. Now that has traditionally not happened in Bengal, because there's a sense that if you say those things, you are sort of non-bhadralok, or you come from the hinterland, or you don't say such things. Now that conversation is now people who have posh jobs in big MNCs, they're also coming out and saying that, okay, I go to temples, or I went to this temple this morning, or I'm going to pray. All these things, or I'm doing this puja. So I think that is happening, and that's interesting to watch.
That's so strange, because Bengal has always been the state of Durga Puja, which is
Yeah.
I mean,
Durga Puja,
it's as cultural as it is religious. So I don't
this
understand
Durga
how
Puja,
people
Durga
lacked Hinduism before this, because they
Durga
wear Durga
Puja,
Puja on their
Durga
sleeves.
Puja is like in Kolkata, it's like a carnival. Okay, it's not. It's
Yeah,
traditionally it's been more cultural than religious.
yeah.
Okay, and that's a very interesting aspect of Durga Puja. If you go back in the history of Durga Puja, you will see that well, to many hardline Hindu activists, they would have huge problems with the history of Durga Puja itself. The time it went Barwari, it went communal, as in the sense of for everybody,
Oh, that's
for
very
the community.
interesting.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
so alcohol was served, and beef and pork was served,
yeah,
during Durga Puja back in the day. So it's
yeah.
more of a carnival than sort of it's like, people fly down from outside Kolkata, from abroad, and it's like a huge party time. Why just Durga Puja? Even Saraswati Puja, we joke sometimes. It's like our Valentine's Day. It's puja for Saraswati, but the images in my head, if I were to go back in time, are very different. That's the time you sort of you hope for a date, because the girls are going to come out in saris, and you are in your kurta, so you're hoping for a date. In the morning there's puja, in the evening you take somebody out for a date. So it's like Valentine's Day. That's what the joke is. So that was a sense in large parts of Kolkata, a certain section of Kolkata, the dominant section in terms of the narrative setters of how, say, a Saraswati Puja or Durga Puja is going to be. But if now there's a sense that, okay, this is fine, but this is not just it. I mean, we are also religious people, you know. Some of us, if not all of us, are also deeply
But
religious.
religious
Even in
not in the cultural sense, religious in the
religious,
sense
not
of
just in the cultural
identity
sense, but
and ritual.
religious in the taking pride in your religion sense. And that may not necessarily be at the cost of somebody who's practicing a different faith. Like the acceptance of Nusrat Jahan, for
But
instance,
that's a
is
very thin line there, that not necessarily at the cost of someone, because as this attitude sort of trickles down, and then
yeah.
reaches like a vast segment of society, then people become boastful, and people want to, like, they assert their religion, and then how do you keep? There are no checks and
But
balances here.
let me
The
ask you a
whole
counter
problem
question.
happens when
No,
it blows out of like proportion.
no. So let me ask you a counter question, because this is something I keep thinking about. So are you saying that secularism in India can only be maintained if you tone down your Hinduness?
No,
If
I
you
don't say
take,
that at all.
because I believe that America is also a secular state. Say, I mean,
Yes.
isn't it? I mean,
I mean, you can,
the
of course,
American
you can be
presidents
Hindu.
sort of,
You can, in fact, I don't believe that secularism is a rejection of Hinduism in India.
so if you tone
Although
down
a
your
lot of people do
Hinduness
believe that, I feel
without
like I'm a
no,
proud Hindu, and I'm a proud, like, Krishna
no, you don't
follower,
even
and
have to say you're
I will,
no.
do whatever I
Pallavi,
have to do.
you
Ideal
don't have to
girl
say you're a
religion
proud Hindu. I'm saying, I mean, pride. It's a personal thing. You take pride.
But
You
I
don't have
think
to.
as it trickles down to people in villages and smaller towns, it affects brotherhood in ways, that are damaging,
No, no.
in my opinion.
But that's one of the reasons why the BJP has infiltrated, because there are so many examples of people wanting to do. I in fact shared a picture of a girl who was beaten
That
up,
they
her
do
head
feel
was
suppressed.
smashed, because no, suppressed. You can't even do puja. You can't take a procession. So you have a Durga Puja procession, and you have to alter the date. You know, And that because the government in power is saying no, there's going to be another religious procession that's going to go out this way. So you take the fall, you alter the date.
I think a lot of appeasement politics of different parties is to blame here.
Yes, I mean, so I think all these things are coming up. So this sense in your, so like I said, I mean, to go back to where this all began from, to say that it's only development that Bengal is looking for, that part of Bengal which is perhaps looking for a change in politics, would be faulty. I think there's also a sense of pride in who you are, in terms of your religious identity, that is also coming out, and it is and don't think that it is coming out only in certain sections. It's across sections. It is from people in Kolkata to people in the village to all sections of Bengal. It's not just, it'd be wrong to assume that okay, it's only people of a certain class who are wanting to assert their religious identity. No, I have friends who work in MNCs, who are now proudly sort of putting out pictures of gods and goddesses they worship on Twitter, on Facebook, and putting their pictures of the performing puja on Facebook. So it's very interesting. Like I said, it's a very interesting time. There's going to be chaos, but I hope that whoever comes to power will make some sense of the chaos and take Bengal forward.
Yeah. As long as the party that comes to power, or even the like you said, if BJP gets 100 seats and it is a chaotic government at the end of the day, if they keep governance in focus and not like Hindu identity or Muslim identity, I mean these things can go on parallelly in any case. But if you sort out your governance concerns, then everyone benefits, society at large benefits.
Yes.
Yeah.
The hope.
Yes. Any closing thoughts, Rituparna? It was supposed to be, I think, a 1 hour session, but it's now 1 hour 55 minutes. This is how much fun we've had discussing Bengal. And Deep, one of the best things about your book is that you've spoken to people across party lines, which is fascinating. You give all kinds of perspective, from BJP to TMC to the left, to people on ground, to different people from civil society as well. Like how we can of course agree to disagree about certain issues, but it's a wonderful assortment of views that you have in your book.
Yeah,
it's very good.
Well, talking to a lot of people, this friend of mine, Shubhankar Banerjee, very interesting friend, just sent me a story on WhatsApp that dead tiger in Sundarbans had swallowed a king cobra. So we were talking about Mitun king cobra. So there's a dead tiger has been. So he's asking me if he can post this on social media without people thinking that it's a political post. So yeah,
I think Cobra is not leaving Mithun anytime in the near future. He's going to be stuck to his identity. Along with disco dancer, they'll also be Cobra.
Yeah. Have you seen the original? Have you seen the clip of? I'll send it to you. Have you seen the clip of the film where he said it? You only heard
the clip
it.
Of the no, I haven't seen the clip of the film.
I haven't seen it either.
I'll mail it to you.
He also is a turncoat. He has been supporting different parties at different times.
He was a bomb throwing Naxal. Bomb throwing Naxal. From bomb throwing Naxal to sort of siding with the sort of communists to Mamata Banerjee to now turncoat. I mean, interesting journey. Very interesting journey.
Yeah, he's all of Bengal politics in one person. All parties in one person.
Yes.
From the left to the right. What a journey.
Yes. Extreme left to right. I mean,
absolutely. He began his film career with a movie called Shikar, which was based on the zamindari system and inequalities in society and the landed gentry versus the peasants, and now again fully right wing.
Yeah.
Very, very, very interesting. So this was a wonderful session. Rituparna, do you have any closing thoughts aside from your lack of hope for your home state?
No, it's not my lack of hope. I do hope that we manage to find a middle ground in which, the identity, this is my problem. Even when you call America a secular state, it's not. When I was a kid, I'd see all the presidents saying, "God bless America."
Yes, I was coming to that. Yes, I mean, they take over the Bible.
America is Haryana. California is a whole different planet from literally the rest of the world, and a few parts. But the southern states are very much like, UP, Haryana, the ethos, and I think they touched upon that. It's very similar. So I wish we could focus on governance, and I guess that's been the whole allure of Marxism, that people want to serve, the whole allure, especially in a state like Bengal, that you want to be there for the community. You want to, socialism and all of that. So I hope they take that whoever wins, forget about all these things, do the damn work. The state really needs it.
Absolutely. This has been a state that's the left has imported ideas of governance from Russia and China, and those imported ideas haven't necessarily worked in India. And to realize that it's become electorally irrelevant is necessary now.
It hasn't worked because it requires work. That's the other problem.
Yeah, that's the other problem. Of course, it requires work.
Yeah. The world to work itself out. It's hard work.
Of course, the other problem is that parties shouldn't only work before elections, but work after elections as well. That which is the expectation from big political parties is that if you have the resources, the funds, the energy, the people, the cadres, you put it to use, and that's why people are voting you to power. Deep, any closing thoughts from you?
No,
Anything that you'd like to tell the readers about the book?
No, I would completely sort of go with what Rituparna said. I think whoever comes to power should sort of focus on Bengal's development. It's a great state, great people living in a state of hopelessness. I hope that people like me who after their masters or their graduation had to leave Bengal because there are not those many jobs, or to sort of have a degree of success outside Bengal, and then know in your hearts that you will not find an equivalent job in Bengal. That state needs to change. I also hope that there is whoever comes to power or retains power in Bengal put some kind of check on political violence that erupts from time to time in Bengal. It's horrific, and it does us no good as a people when such things happen. And beyond rhetoric, something happens. Like you said, all sections of society needs to sort of come up. The stereotypes need to end, and this ghettoization needs to end. And no community is looked at, or no people is looked at as milch cow. And I really hope that Bengal should, because there have been so many thought leaders from Bengal, wonderful artists and men and women of literature and politics, and from all walks of life, science. There's no reason why a state should sort of be this way. So whoever comes to power, retains power, need to focus on that.
Absolutely. So both of you come from a state that has had an edge, since the independence movement, and it has been like the fulcrum of our literary, our intellectual, our our sort of our progressive cultures have emerged from Bengal, whether it's reading, writing, dancing, art. I also feel that the state, instead of this much infighting and instead of these heavy ideologies, if it could focus on things like tourism, things like preserving culture. For instance, there's a like I joke with with my Bengali friends about this. There's a museum on Baker Street for Sherlock Holmes, but there's nothing for Vyomkesh Bakshi in Calcutta. So something like, I'm a non-Bengali who's consumed all of Vyomkesh Bakshi, and it's like a big thing in my family. So we feel like why doesn't Bengal promote it's literary marvels, it's literary icons a lot more than it does, instead of like cobra and like snake and all kinds of
No, I think, like I said, I mean, all voices should come up, so please don't attack the cobra. I think Mithun Chakravarti should exist with.
I don't think anyone's attacked the cobra. If anything, the cobra can attack other people.
I think the cobra should exist with the Feluda and with Vyomkesh Bakshi.
The Feluda, yes.
Yes, cobra and the Feluda should coexist. But yes,
quite a picture though, yeah.
Yes. So again, in an India Today conclave, this was asked that why is Feluda, for instance, not far more popular figure outside Bengal than he is? I mean, Feluda
wasn't translated properly and wasn't televised, wasn't like made available to them. Although the stories are far better, far engaging, and many more. You get different aspects in different cities in Bengal, and even Cuttack, and even all of the East comes. comes into it beautifully.
Yes, yes. And Feluda himself was such a cosmopolitan character. But why is it not made in? I mean, Srijit Mukherjee has done a sort of teleseries on Feluda, but again, it's in Bengali with English subtitles. But why is it not being picked up by, say, for a
Absolutely.
more
And
for
Netflix,
a pan India
one of the
audience?
OTTs.
All of these things
Yeah.
culturally also sort of you need to go bigger. Now there's Netflix and Amazon and all of that, so the options are more.
Yeah.
And sort of economically, definitely Bengal needs to come up. And the Bhadralok needs to be less hypocritical.
That's it. Lovely. So this has been a very exciting discussion. It got a little intense in some places, but overall a
Yes.
lovely discussion on Bengal, on Bengal's diversity, and whoever wins the 2021 Bengal, the ultimate goal is to uplift the state, uplift this great state that's given so much to this country, has led the independence movement, the cultural renaissance in such big ways. So, and also accepting that Bengal is beyond Calcutta's borders, Bengal is beyond its elite, Bengal is beyond
Yes.
Chittaranjan Park. It's a lot many people who have not had the chance to tell their stories.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Deep and Rituparna, for attending this session. I've learned so much about Bengal and Bengal's politics from the two of you. I go back
Thank you,
and
Pallavi. It
enrich.
was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Goodbye.